So this morning I'm going to discuss an article written by Caroline Glick where she exposes the trap that the Gentiles have laid for Israel better than anything that I've seen, better than any exposure that I have seen. This is an awesome article. I'm going to go ahead and read it and comment on it. This is on the Jewish News Syndicate. And the title is The Legal Landmine on the Road to Sovereignty. There is a landmine on the road to Israeli sovereignty on the parts of Judea and Samaria. It must be defused before it blows up Israel's efforts to secure its national interests and takes President Donald Trump's peace plan and U.S.-Israel relations along with it. The landmine is not an actual explosive charge, but the clique of unelected lawyers at the top of Israel's legal system. Now, she's pointing the finger of blame at the unelected lawyers in the bureaucrats in Israel. While they may share part of the blame, I'm going to point out to you how the trickery, the cleverness of national governments, Gentile governments, have put Israel in a catch-22. And those of you who don't know what catch-22 means is damned if you do and damned if you don't. All right? Since 1967, the State of Israel has carefully left its position on the legal status of Judea and Samaria ambiguous to avoid unnecessary confrontations. At the same time, Israel has assiduously refused to make any concessions about its actual sovereign rights to the areas. Since 1967, Israel has administered the areas through a military government and even agreed to do so in accordance with the prescriptions of the Geneva Accords and Hague Conventions. However, as the military advocate general during this 1967 Six-Day War and later Supreme Court President Meir Shamgar said at the time and throughout the intervening years, Israel has acted out of goodwill, not legal compulsion. In other words, the State of Israel's long-standing position is that its control of Judea and Samaria does not fit the international legal definition of belligerent occupation. Israel is not the occupier of the areas. Various Israeli jurists have presented various factual legal arguments over the years to back this position. Among them is the doctrine of ut possidetis juri. Now, of course, that would be Roman law. At the time the Gentiles comes to an end, Israel will no longer be subject to Roman law, you see, and I will continue, which makes it clear that the heirs to the British Mandate, Israel, inherited the borders of the League of Nations Mandate, which included Judea and Samaria. So in other words, even your ut possidetis juri admits that Israel owns Judea and Samaria. Interesting, huh? Israeli jurists have also explained that since the Jordanian occupation of the areas from 1949 through 1967 was illegal, Israel's assertion over the control over the areas in 1967 was not a belligerent occupation. Then, too, since the 1994 peace treaty between Israel and Jordan ended the state of belligerence between them, and incidentally, parts of that peace agreement have now expired very recently. I will continue. There is no state of belligerence in Judea and Samaria, which Jordan illegally took control over during its illegal war of aggression against the Jewish state in 1948 through 1949. Whatever the legal argument put forward over the years, the unchanging position of every Israeli government has been that Israel is not a belligerent occupier of the areas. But along came then Supreme Court President Aaron Barak. In a 2004 judgment on a petition asking the court to reject Israel's right to build a security fence in Judea and Samaria, with a wave of his pen, Barak dismissed Israel's position. Well, he should have been removed. But I will continue. Without explanation and without a legal basis, Barak wrote in the opening line of his judgment, since 1967, Israel holds the areas of Judea and Samaria in a belligerent occupation. The judgment in which Barak made this outrageous assertion was one where he sided with the government against the petitioners and recognized the legality of Israel's decision to build a security fence to protect its urban center from Palestinian terrorists, because his judgment was substantively supported Barak's radical declaration passed without much notice. But in the intervening years, without a shred of legal authority and in defiance of the position of successive governments, the IDF's Military Advocates General's Unit and the state prosecution embraced and worked to advance Barak's radical position. One of the main officials involved in this effort has been the current Attorney General, Mandelblit. In 2017, during Knesset debates regarding the passage of a law that normalizes the legal status of Israeli communities built on lands not formally designated as state lands, Mandelblit issued a short legal brief. In it, he wrongly claimed that the bill before the Knesset breached international law. Mandelblit added that if the Knesset went forward and passed a law, it would open Israel to litigation from foreign actors like the European Union. Mandelblit's brief was quickly used by representatives of foreign governments and organizations to attack the Knesset and its right to legislate in accordance with Israel's lawful rights in Judea and Samaria. Now, at this point, I have to say this to the lawyers in Israel. You guys need to be very, very careful, because that land does not belong to you. It belongs to your Moshiach. You can't stand there and be an attorney for the enemies of Israel and expect him not to notice. Last year, Mandelblit headed a working group that drafted a position paper regarding the International Criminal Court's jurisdiction to prosecute Israeli nationals for alleged war crimes. Again, disregarding the government's lawful position regarding Israel's sovereign rights to Judea and Samaria, Mandelblit invented a new concept utterly untethered from international law. He claimed that sovereignty is an abeyance in Judea and Samaria. What does that mean? I have no idea. Let me go look it up. A state of temporary disuse or suspension. So let's look at this again. He claimed that sovereignty is a temporary suspension in Judea and Samaria. How does that make sense? Well, I guess that's the point that Caroline Glick is making. He makes no sense. Mandelblit's legally ungrounded legal position has been seized on by the ICC prosecutor to justify war crimes prosecution of Israeli nationals. In other words, Mandelblit has repeatedly used spacious legal argumentation in a manner that, at a minimum, has already caused actual harm to Israel's international position. This brings us to the present, when Israel's incoming Netanyahu-Gantz government moves forward, applying the state's legal rights to sovereignty over parts of Judea and Samaria in accordance with the Trump administration's peace plan. and the potential harm Mandelblit may intend to cause Israel through his radical, ungrounded legal opinions. Last November, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced that U.S. government's renunciation of the Obama administration's position that the Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria are illegal. This week, U.S. Ambassador David Friedman published an article in the New York Post restating Pompeo's position. In defending the legality of the Trump plan under international law, Friedman also argued implicitly and correctly that under international law it is legal for Israel to apply its laws to areas of Judea and Samaria. In an interview with Israel Hayom last week, Friedman said that the United States is willing to recognize Israel's sovereignty in Judea and Samaria in accordance with the Trump vision of the peace plan. Only 30%. As I have said many times before, Moses said that he would not even give up one hoof. When Pharaoh said, okay, all you Israelis, you go ahead and leave Egypt, but leave your cattle behind. And Moses said, we will not leave a single hoof behind. You see. So this 30% business is kind of like the Christians today concerning Jeremiah 31, the New Covenant chapter, saying to Israel, okay, you can have 30% of the New Covenant. No, that's not how it works. Israel gets all of the New Covenant. Therefore, Israel gets all of Judea and Samaria as written in Jeremiah 31. And those days in Jeremiah 31, the name Judea was not a term, but Samaria was. So you can go and do your searching in Jeremiah 31 for Samaria, and you will see that in the New Covenant chapter, Samaria goes to Israel. All of it. Friedman's interview with Israel Hayom, like his article in the New York Post, indicated that the administration views Israel's plan to apply its laws to areas of Judea and Samaria in accordance with the guidelines of the Trump peace plan as a matter of some urgency. They're pushing hard. They're pushing Israel hard to apply sovereignty to that 30% of Judea and Samaria. Why is this happening? Is the reason a fair and honorable reason? Or is there something else going on here? We'll continue, and I think we're going to find out. A glance at the political environment in America shows that they are right to view the issue as urgent. Friedman wrote his article in response to an article senior Obama administration officials Philip Gordon and Robert Malley wrote 2 weeks ago in Foreign Policy. In their article, the two called for the presumptive Democrat nominee, former Vice President Joe Biden, to openly threaten Israel. These are words that should never be together in any form. With a cutoff of military aid and with future U.S. support for condemnation of Israel at the United Nations Security Council, if the government dares to take hold of the new covenant, It's the same thing. If you read Jeremiah 31, you'll see it. If the government dares to apply Israeli sovereignty to the Jordan Valley and the Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria in accordance with the Trump plan. In other words, the two called for Biden to use Israel as a campaign weapon. So the Trump administration is urging Israel to hurry, 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 hurry. Why the hurry? Is the Trump administration afraid they might not get reelected? Well, they have reason to, and it was because, the reason is because of the blasphemy that President Donald Trump committed against the Messiah and against the Father. Yes, he has good reason to believe that he will only have one term. I'll show you. Okay. And you can look at these headlines here. And who still has these headlines? Trump's enemies in the news media. The Washington Post, Vanity Fair, CBS News, CNN. Let's see. I'll go to Market Watch because I don't like any of these publications. Remember, this occurred back in August 24, 2019. What happened shortly afterwards? A coronavirus broke loose, didn't it? So Wayne Allen Root what he does is he makes his quote, President Trump, and I quote, folks, is the greatest president for Jews and for Israel in the history of the world, not just for America. And the Jewish people in Israel love him like he's the king of Israel. They love him like he is the second coming of, as he says, God. This is blasphemy. Now, Donald Trump could have done this. He could have said, Wayne Allen Root, you're wrong. This is blasphemy, what you did. But no, he retweeted it. Trump, of course, fully embraced Root's comments, thanking the conspiracy theorist in a series of tweets for his very nice words. Thank you to Wayne Allen Root for his very nice words. And he repeats this, let's see, blasphemy. Right here. Let's see here. I saw the whole tweet months ago, and I posted it so that everybody could see how foul it was. I don't know why they didn't bother to repost a tweet. Maybe I have to go to CNN. Vanity Fair. Here's the rest of the tweet, like he's the king of Israel, right? This is Donald J. Trump reposting that blasphemy on August the 21st, 2019. And now we know for sure that this coronavirus broke loose in October, as early as possibly even September of 2019. Now, he thought that he was going to win an easy second election. Now his adversaries, political adversaries, are using this coronavirus as a political tool against him. You do not mess with Israel. You do not blaspheme Israel's Elohim, and you do not claim that the Israelis are committing idolatry. So, right here it says, going back to Jewish News Syndicate, in other words, the two called for Biden to use Israel as a campaign weapon. If Israel supports Trump's peace plan and implements its plan to apply its law to the Jordan Valley and Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria, as specifically or specified in the Trump plan, the Biden campaign, they said, should demonize Israel as an appendage of the Trump administration rather than a nation state determined to secure its national interest. And there is, folks, your catch-22. I will continue. Then again, if Israel caves to Biden's threats and rejects Trump's vision for the Middle East peace, then Biden will present Israel's self-destructive behavior as proof that Trump is a failed statesman. Of course, this is the reason why the Trump administration is pushing so hard. To get Israel to start implementing Trump's peace plan of the century, which is supposed to make Trump look so good that he deserves every Nobel Peace Prize that anyone has ever received before him. Now she continues. It is important to recognize just how groundbreaking Trump's position on the legal status of Judea and Samaria is on one hand, and just how devastating the Gordon Malley position, since embraced openly by dozens of senior Democratic operatives, is on the other hand. She's illustrating this catch-22, this trap that they're setting for Israel. But folks, just as is written in Psalm 9, the trap that the Gentiles laid for Israel, they got caught in themselves. When Israel unified Jerusalem immediately after the Six-Day War and applied Israeli law to the areas of the capital that had been occupied by Jordan, the Johnson administration opposed the move and supported a non-binding condemnation of Israel at the UNSC. When Israel applied its law to the Golan Heights in 1981, the Reagan administration opposed the move and supported a non-binding condemnation of Israel at the UNSC. Now, this statement that she makes here, I completely disagree with. She says that both Johnson and Reagan administrations are rightly remembered as pro-Israel administrations. Wrong! They were at best like a broken reed of Egypt. I will continue. Today, not only will the Trump administration not reject Israel's move to secure its long-term interests and rights in Judea and Samaria by applying its laws to parts of the area. It will support the move and recognize its legality under international law. As for the Democrats, they are openly advocating extorting Israel with threats to force it to embrace policy that endanger it strategically. Having recognized the stakes involving the Trump plan, we return to Mandelblit and his comrades at the top of Israel's legal establishment. If they try to block the government and the Knesset from applying Israeli law to the Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria and to the Jordan Valley, their actions will be devastating for the country in two ways. First, they will undermine Israel's ability to secure its sovereign rights and strategic interests in its heartland. Yes, she is right on the money. Judea and Samaria is the heartland of Israel. Second, they will cause massive strategic damage to Israel's relations with the United States. If the legal establishment scuttles the government's intention, backed by a Knesset majority, to apply Israeli law to these areas, they will capsize Israel's ties with the Trump administration and the Republican Party as a whole. Both the Trump administration and the Republicans will view Israel as an unreliable ally that betrays its supporters. As for the Democrats, an Israeli decision to reject Trump's plan by failing to apply its laws to the Jordan Valley and the Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria will convince the Democrats that Israel will reward them for abusing it and opposing its interests and rights. This will ensure that the Democrats will escalate their malicious assaults on the Jewish state. Once again, catch 22, a trap. This is a trap. The peace plan of the century was a trap. And whether the author fully knows this or not, this is the trap written about in Psalm 69:22. I believe it is. I also believe it is the trap written about in 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 1 through 3. More generally, if the Mandelblit-led legal establishment thwarts the government's plans to apply Israeli law to the Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria and the Jordan Valley, in furtherance of the Trump peace plan, it will massively undermine Israel's international posture. The Europeans, the Sunni Arab states, the Russians, and the Chinese will reasonably conclude that standing with Israel is a losing proposition. The avalanche of hatred and isolation Israel will experience in the wake of such a realization will be nothing we have ever experienced, and I agree with her. Shall I hide this then? No. Under the circumstances, it's obvious that what the incoming Netanyahu-Gantz government must do to secure Israel's interests and legal rights of sovereignty in Judea and Samaria and to protect its international relations. The government must also publicly reject Mandelblit's absurd claim that sovereignty in Judea and Samaria is in abeyance and forthrightly assert Israel's sovereign rights to the areas under international law. Well, to the author I say, Judea and Samaria will be secured, but not under Goyim law. It will be secured by the law of the new covenant. Jeremiah 31. That's how it's going to be secured. So too, the incoming government must instruct the state prosecution and the IDF military advocate unit to properly represent Israel's long-standing position that Israel does not administer Judea and Samaria as a belligerent occupation, but as a holder of sovereign rights to the area in accordance with international law. In the event a lawyer in an official position presents a different position from any forum, they do not represent the state of Israel. You see what's coming? I told you to mark your calendar for July, did I not? Well, as we get closer, we're going to find out. Go to this book of Zechariah. Let's trying to find it. I guess I'll just have to try to Zechariah 9 first. What is wrong with this thing? All right. Okay, it's not this one. Come on. Let's see here. You know what this is going to lead to, right? It's going to lead to Zechariah 12, 13, and 14. Now remember, folks, you know how the Gentiles always want to go to this particular verse right here, but they never bother to look up this word, aloof. In that day I will make the aloof of Judah like a hearth of fire among the wood. What is an aloof? A lamb. A docile, gentle lamb. Well, we know who the lamb is. The Lamb of Judah will say in his heart, the inhabitants of Judah shall be strong in Jehovah of hosts their Elohim. So we'll go to here. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling, in verse 2. And all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege, encampment against both Judah and Jerusalem. And in that day I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone. For all people that burden themselves with it shall be cut to pieces. Now remember, folks, this Trump peace plan of the century, claimed that Israel would have all of Jerusalem, but that the status quo will remain, which means Israel will not have all of Jerusalem. It was a lie. If Israel has sovereignty over all of Jerusalem, then the Wafd has to leave the Temple Mount. But under the Trump administration's plan, the enemy stays at the Temple Mount. That's falsehood and deceit from the devil himself, 101. Then the second Jordanian capital would be in Abu Dis, which would be in a part in the outskirts of East Jerusalem under the Trump peace plan. This Trump peace plan of the century, is destined to fail. It is a trap. The two parties in the United States are setting a trap for Israel, and they're going to be caught in it. Not the Israelis are going to be caught in it, but the Goyim are going to be caught in it. It is going to cause them to come against Jerusalem, beginning with the people who are round about: Jordan, Iran, Egypt, Saudis, Turkey. It begins with them. Yes, and the Lamb of Judah will be like a hearth of fire among the wood, and a torch of fire among the sheaves. And they will devour, and he will devour all the people round about. On the right hand, that would be Jordan, Iran, possibly even the Arabians, the Syrians, and on the left hand, what? Well, the left hand is the Mediterranean Sea. That is exactly right. Rome. Now, some of you might say, well, I'm looking at right hand and left hand wrong. Makes no difference on both sides. When you're looking at it on a map, the left-hand side is Rome. Is Rome. Is Rome. Is Rome. So they're going to burn. He's going to burn Rome. Jerusalem shall once again be inhabited in her own place, even in Jerusalem, East Jerusalem. You see, folks, they set a trap for Israel, and Caroline Glick has illustrated it to you, what they have done. Can there be any doubt what happens next? They will fall into their own trap, folks. They set a trap for Israel that Israel could not possibly escape from. They set a trap for Israel so that whatever move that Israel makes, they will come to attack Israel, Israel's enemies. This is what they've done, so that they will come and attack Israel. And in doing so, they will fall in their own snare, as written in Jeremiah, Psalm 9. Verse 15, the heathen are sunk down in the pit which they made, into the net in which they hid. Who they hide it for? Read the whole of this psalm. Is their own foot taken? Now we get right here, verse 17, the wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the goy that forgot Jehovah. Does it need to be made any more clear? We'll go to Psalm 69, verse 22. Let's see here. We'll go to Strong's Concordance. 69:22. Let their table become a snare before them, and let shalom, peace, and safety, let it become the lure, the tripline. Yeah? They're going to try to ensnare Israel with peace plan. That is going to be the thing that is going to be the snare that brings the nations round about Israel to entrench against them when Messiah comes. 1 Thessalonians 5. But of the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write to you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of Jehovah so comes as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, shalom, peace plan of the century, then sudden destruction comes upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Luke 21:35. We'll start in verse 34. And take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with vomiting drunkenness and the cares of this life, so that that day comes upon you unawares. For as a snare it shall come on all of them that dwell upon the whole earth, the face of the whole earth. And it says, watch, I pray you, not watch and pray always. It says, watch, I pray you, so that you may be counted worthy to escape all of these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. Watch, watch, watch. I'm telling you to watch this peace plan of the century, the politics that goes along with it. How a man foolishly made himself equal with the greatest, and is using the peace plan of the century to elevate himself. And anyone who does this in a blasphemous way is going to be struck down. That's just the way it is. And they are putting Israel in an untenable position. It's the fault of the Gentiles for doing this. It is the fault of the Gentile nations' governments for putting Israel in a vice. And they will pay. They will pay dearly. Prepare yourselves. This is not going to go unanswered.